With Hashem's help, we're going to learn Yevamos Daf Chavav. We left off Chavav Amud Aleph right away on the top of the Amud by the Mishnah. We are continuing to learn dinim regarding rumors. How should we react towards rumors? And the Mishnah taught us that the last three examples would be if a Chacham who was unable to free a woman of a vow, and therefore, since he couldn't nullify the vow, she was forced to get divorced from her husband. Or we learned that if a shliach brings a get from across the seas, from out of Israel, and you need his testimony of b'fani nechta. Or if one witness says your husband died, and we are relying on his testimony or on his action or inaction for her to get divorced, now she's a free woman, that person should not marry her. Says the Mishnah, Vikulam, and in all of these cases, Shahoyu lehem nashim, if the Chacham was married when he was not matir the neder, if the shliach that brought the get, when he brought the get, then he was married to another woman. If the witness that says, your husband died, was then married, he himself was married, Mesu, and then these people's wives died, then mutaris li nasei lahem. Then they will be allowed to marry the woman who became free through them. The whole thing is because you don't want to arouse a rumor. So this Gemara is a very deep psychological Gemara. It goes without saying that very unhealthy people can make rumors from nothing. But the Gemara is giving you now the right framework, halachic framework, when rumors are justified, and when you can argue, I don't have to do things or not do things because of a fear that people will make rumors. Who cares about such people anyway? So if a man is married, healthy people will not make rumors on him. If the Yachid Mumcha was not married then don't marry that woman. Makes sense.
Were you allowed to marry more than one woman at that time?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't make a difference.
I was going to say, we're not talking about multiple wives.
First of all, make it very clear. Times in the Mishnah, people were still allowed to marry more than one wife. However, for people who should learn enough Talmud, it was very rare. It was a very unusual thing. And I don't think it's about the rarity of it. It's the idea that an aide testified that your husband died only to marry her is a terrible thing. It's mamash evil. So the fact that the aide cannot marry her because you don't want to create a rumor, that alone is a chiddush. So the Mishnah adds, if he's already married, you don't have to worry about it. Another detail says the Mishnah, V'kulem shenisu'u la'acherim. All of these women, even if the chacham, if the shliach, if the aide was not married, and this woman now became free, an aide comes and says your husband died. Now this woman married another man, and either she got divorced from that other man or she became widowed from the other man. Again, in all of these cases, the original chacham, shliach, or aid, mutaris li nasei lahem. Now you can have a marriage. Again, for there to be rumors here, it's on a whole different level. We don't have to be concerned about. And the final din is v'kulam. Going back to the original case, the chacham, the shliach, the aid, they were not married; they were single. And now they freed this woman somehow. She can marry the chacham's son, the chacham's brother. The Gemara is going to add, and it goes without saying, the Chacham's father. And the Gemara is going to analyze every single piece. Again, people that were learning mamish Talmudic psychology, this is teaching us what is healthy human thought and what's unhealthy human thought. What's unacceptable human thought, meaning that the whole issue is don't do things that might arouse suspicion. If certain suspicions are unjustifiably al pi Torah, then we don't take them into account. And it will be a mamash, a phenomenal piece of Gemara. You can write a whole book on the next few lines over here. Let's read it. You'll see in a moment. Mesu, the first case of the Mishnah. That Mesu, in other words, that if the let's speak about just the Chacham. There was a rabbi. A woman comes to the rabbi and tells the rabbi, I made a vow. The vow is that my husband cannot have any benefit from me. Or I cannot have any benefit from my husband. She made a vow, I cannot have any benefit from my husband. Any. If that vow stands, that would also affect that they can never be together physically. If a couple is not allowed halachically to be together physically, they have to get divorced. Now there's a concept called hataras nadarim. Vows could become nullified. But under these circumstances, the rabbi, who was the expert, tells this woman, I can't help you. I can't nullify your vow. So now she got divorced. So the Mishnah says, this chacham cannot marry her. Says, however, if this Chacham, when he was unable to help her, if he was married, now his wife died, says the Mishnah, he can marry her. So ask the Gemara, why did the Mishnah only speak about a case where the Chacham's wives died, now he can marry her? What about another case? He was married, and after this case, he divorced his wife. So the Gemara infers from the Mishnah, meis, in. But Nizgar Shulai. Why? Because people are going to say that he saw this woman, he wanted to marry her, so first he did something to make sure she has to get divorced. Then he divorced his wife to marry her. We do have such a fear. Do we have such a fear? How much do we become? I mean, that's even a greater evil. The man is already conspiring to marry her based on the fact he's going to divorce his wife again. Then a man was allowed to marry two women, just it was uncommon. And a man then, in the times of the Mishnah and the Gemara, if they were to marry this other woman, they would first divorce their original wives. So Amalei Rafilu Ravashi, Vahatanya, we learned in a Braisa clearly different, that Afilu Nizgarshu, also he's allowed to marry her. So these people, the Shliach, the Chacham, the Eid, who are married, if they divorce their wives, can they marry her or not? It seems to be a machlokes between the Braisa and the Mishnah, so the Gemara reconciles. It's not a machlokes, it's different cases. Loi kasha, and a couple of options. Dahave ktata. When the fighting, look at this logic. When they were fighting before this case came up, here we say, since they were fighting anyway, you know why he divorced her? Because they were fighting anyway. They were known to be a couple that don't get along. Well, I'm saying that there was a previous Yila. Now, the counter to this, which the Gemara is correcting, is you can argue they were fighting. But now that he met this woman, now he says, now that we don't say. If they were fighting before, then we don't care. Even if he divorced his wife, he could marry her. Since they were not fighting before, here it already looks worse. A man is a happily married man. Bitamol, he sees this woman, and he makes sure she gets divorced. That's what they're going to say. He didn't make sure anything. He was a chacham doing his job. But they're going to say, he said something, and now he married her. So there'll be more suspicion. Don't do things that will make people spread rumors on you. Another approach, even if there was never known shalom bayis issues, as we would say today. Who began the fight? If she begins the fight, so you can't blame it on him.
How would anybody know?
How would anyone know that? And the counter argument would be, just because the woman is starting the fight because she's sensing that her husband has his eyes on another woman. Okay, so we have to look into this, but this Gemara is very deep, very insightful. It's a fascinating debate in the Talmud, or insight. It's not even a debate, it's across the board. When is there more legitimacy to a rumor? When is there less legitimacy to a rumor? In other words, when is there more possibility that the man, look what's going on here, that the Chacham, who's a mumche, unfortunately, you could be very knowledgeable in one area and be unethical. And he went ahead and he made sure that the couple got divorced. And these are things that happen today, unfortunately, and it's terrible that you find out that a rabbi was advising a woman to get divorced, God forbid, and then he marries her. This is what we're talking about. And it's a nana. And these are the dinim, that if he did it, you don't force him to get divorced. But it's a terrible thing. And was there a fight before? Wasn't who initiated the fight? And who knows? Let's go weiter. We're not done yet. It's gavaldik this. V'kulam shenisu, now the Mishnah gave another thing. That all of these women, if they married someone else, even if the Chacham was a single guy, the Shliach was single, the Eid was single, right? He somehow made her be free. She married another man, then she got divorced or widowed from the other man. Now the Chacham could marry her. Kosalka daitach, there's a possibility here that misa on misa v'gerushin agerushin. Let's give the case of mace, the previous Mishnah. A man says, your husband died. So says the Mishnah, the Eid was single also. Came along this woman, married another man. What happened? The Mishnah says divorced or mace. Maybe also died. The other husband died, he can marry her. 1 second. We spoke this by heart a few times already. We're going to learn later in Yevamos the machlekes. It's a famous machlekes between Rebbe and Rab Shimon ben Gamliel regarding a isha katlanis, which is if a woman was doubly widowed. The Rebbe holds no one can ever marry her. According to Rashi, this is a big machlekes Rashi and Tosfos here and Daf Chafav. It's good to remember this. We paskin like Tosfos, but according to Rashi, if a woman is divorced twice, you're not allowed to marry her. According to Rashi, Tosfos says, why not marry her? Even if you'll get divorced, you're not going to die. There's no mortal danger. But in any event, whatever, in other words, the Tosfos says that the law of a katlanis is only if she's doubly widowed. Rashi learns that it goes on gerushin. If a woman is married, gets divorced, she marries another, gets divorced, don't marry her, you'll get divorced. Now, Rab Shimon Gamliel says, he agrees with the concept, but he says that a chazaka is only after 3 times. She has to kill 3 husbands, not 2 husbands. I'm just kidding. Not killing, the 3 husbands died on her.
Are the circumstances of the death, does that come into play at all?
And the police will ask that question, but no, Torah doesn't take that in consideration. Because the way we explained it in the beginning,
Car is on her head.
yeah, that's right, because we're going to explain that the spirit of the first man is in her, and he did that. Once we get spiritual, there's no limits. You can anything will be connected to anything.
What does Rabban Gamliel say about divorce?
So that's a machlekes Rashi and Tosfos. No, they argue regarding 2 or 3. Yeah, no, Rebbe says twice. Rashbak says only 3 times. If the Mishnah's case would also be mace a mace and get on get, then it's l'chayda going to mean that our Mishnah is only Rebbe. First of all, it's not the end of the world, but not of Shimon Gamliel. Name him assistant like Rebbe, because the Ike Rebbe, in fact it's not like Rebbe, because Rebbe holds twice as enough. Ha'amar b'treizim navi chazaka. So the Mishnah can be Rebbe, and the cases in the Mishnah will be that the witness said that she died, her husband died, and then she married another man divorced her. It's only death, divorce, or divorce and death. Never double one on top of the other. Right? Misa, Agerish and Amisa. And you just look inside the top Tosfos. That's good to remember. Yevamos Chavav, that Agerish says Rashi, the reason why the Gemara here discussed divorce is not because a man, not like Rashi, not because a man cannot marry a woman that was divorced twice or thrice. Nishtamis. Says Tosfos, Agav Misa Naket Gerushin. Since it comes to, we're mentioning all together. But the really, halachically, afilu nizgar shekama piyamim, this is really practical. Even if a woman was divorced more than once, according to Rebbe, even if she was divorced twice, according to the Rashbag, even if she was divorced 3 times already, chazaka, shari elinasi, marry her. What's the chazaka telling you? That you're for sure going to divorce her? Okay, it's all signed. So whatever, you got married, you get divorced. It's not the end of the world. Not going to kill you. Very good. Only if the husband to marry her die. It's funny. And Rashi holds no. Rashi holds that there's a logic to Rashi also. It's not just about dying.
We don't hold like Rashi because there's many.
We don't paskin that I'm not paskin like Tosfos. You're correct. But Rashi is coming from a place that if a woman, this is a statistics.
Both divorced twice. Is that okay?
It makes it even worse. Doesn't matter. But don't start something that's for sure going to fail. Interesting question. The whole thing is a psychology over here. Let's go weiter. We're not done yet. It's going to get even more exciting.
Failure, you'll never succeed.
But try things that have more chance to success. Nobody to warn. Why are you going into something that to begin with all the odds are against you? V'muzakt.
And if he divorces 5 times, we say nothing about him?
No. Who says it only goes on her?
That's my question.
Question is also about what happens if 2 women died on him. I would say if 1 wife dies on him, don't marry him. I'm just kidding.
It doesn't apply. There's no spirit of hurting.
That's only al pi Kabbalah. What's about al pi halacha? Listen, you have these stories. They're terrible.
But halachically,
we'll look into it. We'll update this online. I'll look into it.
Right? So you can't say.
Slow down. Let's find. I want to find out about this. Isn't there a point where if every man's wife is dying, that you say this guy's a murderer? Like, okay, weiter. Okay. V'kulam mutares libnei moilachem. So that was the last line of the Mishnah. That again, the man, the shliach, the chacham, they're single, and because of them somehow the woman got divorced. So the Mishnah says the issue of don't make rumors is you, the aide, don't marry her, but the aide can have her marry the brother or the child or his son. Says the Gemara, 1 second. We learned otherwise. We learned if there's a rumor that a man has a relation with a woman. Here it's not relevant here if she was married or not married. Point is, a man should not be with a woman out of marriage, period. So there was this rumor that Chaim is with Rachel. Oh. So the din is, Chaim can never marry Rachel's mother, Rachel's daughter, Rachel's sister. Why? Because if he's going to marry to their close relatives, he's going to have more access to them. They'll be part of his life. And it's going to give more substance to the rumor. Aha! He married the mother to be with her. Now also, to know api halacha, the din that a married cannot marry a woman and her sister, or a woman and her mother, that goes to marriage. Which means that if a man had a relation out of marriage with someone, he's allowed to marry her sister, her daughter, her mother. But the opposite is not correct. Once a man married a woman, he can't even have a relation with her sister, al pitaira, or with her mother, erva, or with the daughter. Kares. That's the aroyas. Some of them is a kares and a chayiv skila, chayiv sreifa.
Even if he divorced her.
Even if he divorced her. So here, if there was already a rumor, okay, it's only a rumor, so the din is, don't marry the close relatives. So the question is, why over there by the women, clearly, if there's a rumor that a man is with a woman, you cannot marry even her sister. Over here, the whole thing is about a rumor, the aid, the dayan, that got this woman divorced. I'm wording it bad. The dayan didn't help her stay married, so she had to get divorced because of her neder. So the Mishnah says, the woman can marry his brother. Maybe if she'll marry his brother, he'll have more access to her. Same exact thing. So the Gemara, look what the Gemara answers. Nashi legabi nashi shchichan de azlan. Women hang out with other women. Gavra legabi gavra shchichan. Men don't hang out with men the way women hang out with women. Very interesting. So in other words, the idea like this, a man there's a rumor a man has something with, Chaim has something with Rachel. If he's going to marry Rachel's sister, Leah, Rachel and Leah anyways hang out together. So he's going to be with Rachel the whole time. Masha'ink and this dayan with his brother, men don't hang out with men as much as women hang out with women. Number one. Number two, inami nashi deloy asran shchivasan adadi is mind-boggling. Lekapte adadi. Look at this logic. Let's speak about Rachel and Leah. Right, there's a rumor that Chaim is with Rachel. So now it says, Chaim don't marry Leah. Why? Because if Chaim is going to marry Leah, this is unconsciously. Leah knows that even if her husband, Chaim, is with another woman, halachically he won't have to divorce her. A married woman who's with another man willingly once has to divorce her husband. So men are a lot more fearful that their wives will have a physical relation with another man because that one-time relation will prohibit their whole marriage. Women don't have that same level of fear because even if, God forbid, their husbands had another relation with another woman, that doesn't passel their marriage. So there's a little bit less caution. That's what the Gemara says, don't fight with me, and as ich stehe da. Gavre de asran shchivasan adadi, that men who know that if their wives will have once a relation willingly with another man, their marriage is over, kapti yada, be a lot more careful. So therefore, here what we're saying, the Chacham got this woman divorced. This woman can marry his brother, because his brother will be careful, his antennas will be up, and he'll be after his wife, don't you dare have to do with my brother. She's a lot more fearful.
She's fearful or he's fearful?
Okay, he's a lot more fearful. He'll tell his wife, don't have to do with my brother.
Okay.
Hashem and two women to each other won't be as fearful. Therefore the Chachamim mastered it. Chachamim said, if there's a rumor that Chaim is with Rachel, don't marry Leah. Because if he'll marry Leah, he might be with Rachel. Leah won't stop him as much. A woman won't stop her husband as much as a husband will stop his wife.
This only applies if they're both still single, though.
No. In the case that we're talking about. A married man, the Gemara is saying that a married man is a lot more afraid of, and therefore he's more careful, and he takes certain actions which would prevent his wife from being with any other man, versus a woman doesn't have that amount of fear. Let's go weiter. In fact, if that's the case, if that's the case, why did the Mishnah only say that this woman can marry the Chacham's brother, the Chacham's son? Why not the Chacham's father? So the Gemara says, of course you can marry the father. There's a less of a chiddush there. For sure this woman can marry the father of the Chacham. The beziz, b'nei, minei, children are in awe. Have a certain derech to the parents. In other words, it's a whole different level. God forbid having a relation with a married woman. On top of that, having a relation with your father's wife, that no one would do. There's a lot less fear. But aval b'nai, but the father to a son, the loy beziz aviv minei, the father doesn't have the awe of his son. So one might think, to at least to prevent a rumor, Eimaloi, Komash Malan, that you could marry the father, Pshita, and the brother and the son. We are starting the third chapter. The good thing for us will be that this whole daf today is our cases that we learned, not once, a few times. So whoever was here, this is a review, will be simple. On the other hand, typical from the Gemara, we learned this case many times. We're going to learn another detail now, which doesn't only apply to here, it applies to everything that we learned until now. There'll be a whole different, very important addition to it. And this important addition, we'll have time, is something that makes this negeya halacha l'maisa. It's fantastic. So let's start. Arba achim. And to know right away that normally we speak about 3 brothers. If we speak about 4 brothers, it's because there is a need. Whatever we're learning now, l'cha'ira, could not have been said with 3 brothers. What's the 4 brothers? Let's use the words we used until now. I want to just give an important, just little parenthetic statement that the Gemara later is going to change some of the names. But I think for our consistency, let's stick to our names and we'll just substitute the names in the Gemara, which will be a lot easier, I think, for at least for me. So we have Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. That's what we're using the whole time. I'm saying Reish. I'm saying Reuven married Rachel, Shimon married Leah. And there are 2 other brothers living. All living at the same time. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. Now, if Reuven and Shimon both die childless, we're not speaking about co-wives. See, by co-wives, Yibum or Chalitza only needs to be done to one, and it resolves the other. But since each of these sisters, Rachel and Leah, were married to 2 different men, so now that both of the men die, each one needs either Yibum or Chalitza. What is the issue with this case? So we learned that we're going to have to talk it all out again. There's a machlokes. These are the words, whether we say yesh zika or ein zika. Let's learn the Mishnah with the words yesh zika, and then the Gemara is going to review what we learned good before, that even if ein zika, the same halacha applies. What's yesh zika? Everyone agrees that the whole idea of yibum means that if a brother dies childless, if he has one brother or a few brothers, there is a certain connection, which means zika, between the widow and the brother or brothers. That's no debate. The zika is the cause for yibum, or the zika is the cause that demands at least chalitza. The question is, how strong is that connection? Yesh zika means that the connection is so strong that it's almost as if she's married to whom? Again, we learned before, there are 2 opinions. There were those opinions that said that yesh zika, which means that they're mamish as if they're married, that's only if there's only one brother. And then there are other opinions which would fit into our Mishnah, that even if there's more than one brother. So here, Reuven died, so Rachel is a widow. Who's alive? Levi and Yehuda. Who has to do Yibum or Chalitza? True, we learned V'hoya habchar lechatchila, the mitzvahs with the adult, but it doesn't have to be the gadol. Both of them yesh zika. So it's as if she's bound both to Levi and to Yehuda. Now, midrabanan, a man is not allowed to marry achois zikukasai. A man is not allowed to marry the sister of the woman with whom he has a zika connection with. Being that when Reuven died, right away, his widow Rachel is connected to both Levi and Yehuda, yesh zika. So, whichever one Levi will do yibum with, he's also doing yibum to the woman who is a sister of Zikukasai, because, let me just add, because Shimon also died. Reuven died and Shimon died. There are 2 sisters that fell to Yibum and Chalitza. So each one becomes a Achai Zikukasai. which is a prohibition midrabanan. And even though we learned together that if they would actually both do yibum, one would do yibum with one and the other would do yibum with the other, whenever the act of yibum happened, it retroactively takes away the zikah to the other brother. It's like a clarification. So if Levi will do yibum with Rachel, it's clarifying that the zikah between Rachel was only with Levi, not with Yehuda. And likewise Yehuda with Leah. Yes, but that's only after they did yibum. But since when they both brothers died, there was a zikah to both, so one opinion will hold that even if they got married, Teitzei, you have to get divorced. Because you married a woman with whom for sure, that was the difference between before, you have a zikah with. Let's read this inside. Two of the four brothers married two sisters. Say Reuven married Rachel, Shimon married Leah. And then umesu hanasuyim esa achoyos, both Reuven and Shimon pass away. So now you have two sisters that are connected to both the brothers Levi and to Yehuda. So says the Mishnah, Harei elu choltzois v'loi misyavamos. Chalitza has to be done, and not. How many chalitzas does each sister need? One. That we'll see. That's the whole edition today in Amud Beis. From each one, do chalitza with one. Another does now. Another thing, who has to do chalitza? One brother can do chalitza with both, because each brother has a connection to both. So each brother l'cha'ira can do chalitza with both. That's the way we're learning until now. And if they violated this rabbinic law of achay zikul kasei, and each one did yibum to another, obviously, God forbid, no brother did yibum to both. That's a isur d'oraisa. That's called achay sishtei. But one married, let's say Levi married Rachel, yibum, and Yehuda did yibum with Leah. Our Tana holds yoitziu. And by the way, says the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer reminds us that was really a machlekes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai held that if they already did marriage, if they did yibum yikayim, because retroactively no one married achay zikul kasei. But Beis Hillel were the ones that said yoitziu, and as the Mefarshim point out, it's very rare for a Mishnah to quote an argument now at this stage between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, when Beis Shammai b'mak and Beis Hillel is not even a Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer, there was a tradition, there were people that had this in reverse, that Beis Hillel was the one that said yikayim. Beis Shammai was the one that said Yoitziu. Rebbe in the Mishnah says Yoitziu. So Rabbi Eliezer needs to clarify, you know why Rebbe said Yoitziu? Because Beis Hillel was the one that said Yoitziu. Beis Shammai was the one that said Yikaimu, and we don't take into account what Beis Shammai says. Okay, now let's go to the next case we also learn together. This is Mamash Chazara for us.
Being clear that if they both married,
each one married another one, they nullified the Zika because there was a for sure Achayz Zikul Kasai Isur. Unlike the case we learned, the complicated cases we learned, where there was only a doubtful achay zikul kasei isur. Okay. Now, hoisa achas behem asura al ha'echad isur erva. We learned all this together. So let me give the example that we gave before. Before Reuven married Rachel, Levi has a son. Levi's son married Rachel before, and he divorced Rachel. That means that Rachel is Levi's daughter-in-law. It's a isur erva to marry one's daughter-in-law after she gets divorced. Now Rachel marries Reuven. Same thing, and Leah marries Shimon. Midoy Raisa. Kalosai. And they both die. Of course, because if she's married, she's an Asa Shiz. All of these arois is after she gets divorced. So, okay, you got it? We spoke this case before. So, Rachel is already Levi's erva. Then Rachel marries Reuven. Leah marries Shimon. Reuven and Shimon die. So what were we saying? There is no connection, there's no zikah between Levi and Rachel. She's an erva. He's only connected to whom? He's only connected to, so he can he's only connected to Shimon's wife, to Leah. So Levi can do yibum with Leah. Yehuda is connected to both. Let's go inside. So if achas mehem asur echad isur erva, so then asurba. So then obviously, the case that I gave, Levi cannot marry Rachel, and therefore there's no yibum and no need for chalitza, and therefore umoter b'chaisa. He has a mitzvah, he can choose, but he can do yibum with Leah. However, v'hasheni, but Leah vis-a-vis Yehuda is not, even Rachel. Both Rachel and, for him, he's not ever with either of them. Next thing that we learned before, what happens if this woman that I said, Rachel,
If Rachel is usher to Levi,
yes,
right? So why can't she go marry Yehuda?
because since Yehuda can marry Rachel and Leah, so there's a zika between her and both. Okay. Now, what happens? Not that Leah, the case that I'm giving Rachel, is an erva to Levi because she was his daughter-in-law. What happens if she's only a mitzvah? We explained before, Isur mitzvah means she's called a shniya, a rabbinic erva. Or there's an Isur kedusha. Isur kedusha means the way we learned before, that there is a lav in which there is no kares. And to add, for those who remember, it's not an asay and a loisasa, it's just a loisasa. And really we know that an esa is doicha a loisasa, but the rabbis prohibited it. So there's Isur midrabanan, which means mid-oiraisa, he's connected to both. De facto, he will not marry Leah. In this case, we're giving that let's say Levi will not marry Rachel because Rachel is Asur midrabanan. But that doesn't help the Isur Achayzukul Kasei. Because being that Mida'ay Raisa, there's a real zika to both, so the problem of Achayzukul Kasei remains. Now the final case of the Mishnah, we learned all this before. What's the final case of the Mishnah? Isur Erva. And Vahashni Asur Alzeh Isur Erva. Fantastic. Let's go back to the case of daughter-in-law. Rachel married Levi's son's wife. Levi's sons got divorced. Leah married Yehuda's son, got divorced. And now they married Reuven. What a crazy family. Now they married Reuven and Shimon. And now Reuven and Shimon died. Now it's perfect. No, it's Levi is not allowed to marry Rachel, Erva. Yehuda is not allowed to marry Leah. Now each one of the brothers has a mitzvah. They can still do chalitza, but there's a mitzvah to do yibum with the other one. And this is what we learned, that when there's a chaysa, whenever she's her sister's erva, then the other one can either do chalitza or yibum. The Gemara is going to see where is the case that we were referring to. But this is the case, that there are 4 sisters married to 4 brothers married to 2 sisters, and 2 brothers die, and there is a case that yibum could happen. When could yibum happen? When each wife is only an erva to one and not to the other. Then each one can do yibum with the other. Okay, first of all, we explained this whole Mishnah based on the principle of yesh zika. That has to be clarified, but we learned all this before. Because don't forget, if you don't hold of Zika, if ain't Zika, then why can't you do Yibum with both? If there's no Zika, Reuven and Shimon died, let Levi marry whoever he wants. Especially since there are 2 brothers. There's no Zika here. So we learned this before, because even if you hold ain't Zika, there's a concept that don't do something that could be mevatel the whole mitzvah of Yibum. Which means like this, if Levi is going to marry Rachel, ain't Zika. Shkoyach, everything is nice. But now what has to happen? Don't forget, the moment Levi marries Rachel, Levi cannot marry Leah. Leah becomes his wife's sister. So what has to happen? The other brother, Yehuda, has to do Yibum or Chalitza with whom? With Leah. What happens if Yehuda dies? He might die. If he might die, who's the only remaining brother now? Levi. Now Levi cannot marry Leah because he already married Rachel. So that's why you say, Levi, don't marry Rachel. And as we spoke on before, Rashi explained, really if that's the fear, then the first brother could only do Chalitza. But the second brother should be allowed to do Yibum. So there we answered that they were afraid that if we're going to allow the second brother to do Yibum, the first brother might do Yibum. So they made as a loy plug, no one can do Yibum. Let's read it inside. So this whole Mishnah is based on Yesh Zika, which wouldn't be the end of the world. But the I ein Zika, michti behold, hani mitrei bati ka'asinon. These 2 widows come from 2 different brothers. That means each one needs Yibum and Chalitza. So why don't we say, Hai liyabem chada, and v'hai liyabem chada? So the Gemara says, first of all, could be Yesh Zika. but it doesn't have to be that way. This Tana will hold of the logic, as we explained before, that let's say Levi is going to go ahead and do Yibum with Rachel. When Levi Taka does Yibum with Rachel, Ein Zika, if that kosher, theoretically, now the other one needs Yibum from the other brother. Maybe Yehuda is going to die, and now that Yehuda died, Leah won't be allowed to be connected to Levi, because Levi already married her sister. As the Gemara let's say this by heart. If the Mishnah holds the din of Yesh Zika, the reason why the Mishnah didn't give a case of three brothers, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, period. Reuven married Rachel, Shimon married Leah. Reuven and Shimon die. So the Mishnah is going to tell you that Levi, the only brother, cannot marry either of them because Yesh Zika. Shkoyach. You know why the Mishnah gave a case of four? Because four is a much bigger chiddush than three. Because by three, there's only one brother. One brother, for sure, Yesh Zika. So the Mishnah wanted to tell you Yesh Zika even when there are four brothers. And even when you can theoretically argue, why Zika? Let one brother marry one, let another one marry the other one, which taka happens retroactively. So the Mishnah said four brothers to tell you a chiddush. But if this has nothing to do with the din of Zika, it has to do with the concept of that don't do an act which might disqualify the other. We never found, now there's a chiddush, which is the answer of the Gemara. By three, when Levi marries Rachel, automatically Leah loses the mitzvah because she's done. And by four, there's a bigger chiddush, maybe you'll die. But the Gemara never knew before that there's a difference whether maybe kumavatal, for sure kumavatal, the havamina was, it's all the same. Why couldn't we give the mitzvah by three, the case by three? So the Gemara says here also, let me buy a kamrinon. Let me buy a tlasa. For sure, if there's only three brothers, two died, there's one remaining brother, that if Levi, the only brother, marries any one of them, the other one will be asr on him. Achais ishtoi, the vadlai bat lemitzvahs yivamim. So why, which is why he'll have to do chalitza with both. From two different.
We'd rather do chalitza with both.
Yeah.
Than have
Yibum with one, because the other is coming from a different husband. There's two different women. Trei bati. That's right. Avol dalid. You might have thought lemisa loy chashinon kamash malot that you are chayish. Maybe Yehuda is going to die. Turning the page of Yachiv. That's the case. Chamisha nami lemis. Chamisha nami. What about if there's going to be five brothers and two sisters? Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar. Reuven and Shimon die. Rachel and Leah are up to Yibum or Chalitza. If Ein Zika, what do we say? Now, let me say the reverse. If Yesh Zika, what's the din? To who does the widows have Zika to? To all of the brothers. If Yesh Zika, none of them can do Yibum. Good. However, this is a big enough kamina. If Ein Zika, and the only reason why they cannot do Yibum is because if one does Yibum, maybe the other one will die, as we'll see in a moment. For one person maybe dying, which is a chiddush, that we have to have fear of. But for two people to die, loy chashinan, and therefore that's going to be a halachic difference between Yesh Zika or Ein Zika in our Mishnah. Did the Mishnah give the case of four dafka or lav dafka? If Yesh Zika, lav dafka 4, 5, 6, 10 brothers, 50 brothers, doesn't matter. But if it's only because of maybe you'll be mavatal, that's only if there's only one brother left. It means if Levi is going to marry one sister, you only have one brother left, and if he dies, that woman will lose the mitzvah.
Brothers, you would say
that each one can do even with another one. Very good. Lemisa de trei loy chashinon.
Not chashinan to the Kohen Gadol with one wife.
We mentioned that, and very good. Just to mention that Tosfos spoke about that, and Tosfos explained in Masechtas Yuma that by Yom Kippur, where the Kohen Gadol was sequestered 1 week before Yom Kippur, everything needed to happen in that week. And there, if his wife would die in that week, and that's why many people hold he didn't need to have a reserve wife. Why would she die this week? But being that mitzvahs yibum and chalitza, true, there's a general zriz and magdim and mitzvahs, but you don't have to do it right away. So the more time is given, the more chance someone will die. So even the people there that hold by Yuma, you don't have to have a backup wife, here might hold, don't do Yibum, maybe sometime Yehuda will die. Okay, now we're going to add a phenomenal thing. What the Gemara is adding now is going to affect everything we learned. It makes a lot of sense. We won't finish the whole thing, but we're going to learn Rav's opinion, and it's fantastic. And let's read Rav's case. The Gemara always does it. It says like Anais, Omar Rava, or the Yevamos has a girsa Rabba. I have here in the side. Omar Rabba Barafuna, in the name of Rav. So we'll just quote Rav. Din was said in the name of Rav. Sholosh achoyos. There were 3 sisters. I'm going to use for. It's very simple. Don't worry about this case. It's Rachel, Leah, and Bila. By the way, Bila were sisters. Bila and Zilpah were sisters to Rachel and Leah. They shared the same love and as a father. It's time to know that.
So not only they did
Yes. Okay. Okay. So now we have like this. So you have Rachel, Leah, and Bila, and Shalosh. And how many brothers do we have? Let's go to a case. If there are 3 sisters, we want for there to be 2 remaining living brothers. So how many brothers must we deal with? 5. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar. Let's do the same thing. Reuven married Rachel, stick to that. Shimon married Leah, we'll stick to that. And Levi married Bila. And now all 3 died. So now you have 3 widows, Rachel, Leah, and Bila. How many brothers are left? 2 brothers, Yehuda and Yisachar. So what needs to happen? Think about it by yourselves. What needs to happen? Listen, every woman comes from another man, so every one has an independent mitzvah of either yibum or chalitza. The Mishnah taught us. Let's go with Yesh Zika now. The Mishnah taught us that you have to do chalitza. So who has to get chalitza? All 3. Who does chalitza with these 3?
Either one.
So look at what he said. So he says, Shalosh achayis Yevamos, Shalosh shnei achim. So he said like this. Yevabim zeh chaylos leyachas. Let's give names. So it comes along, let's say Yehuda. Yehuda will give chalitza to Reuven's wife Rachel. V'zeh chaylos lachatz. Let's say that Yisachar will give chalitza to Bila. And now Emtsa is the middle one. Just to point out why she called the middle one, why she not called the third one. Al pi Kabbalah, we understand it. Whenever you have 3, there's to the right and to the left, and you have the center. But it means the third one here. So you have Leah. A big chiddush Rav says Leah needs chalitza from both, and it's going to affect our Mishnah also. What kind of thing is that? Why would she need chalitza from both? So it says the Gemara explaining this. Amalei Rava. So Amalei Rabba. So Rabba says like this: that midika amarta emtsois tzricha chalitza mishneim. From Rav's statement, I can explain it to you. It's based on 2 principles, and you have to have both to explain it. One is Rav holds yesh zika. The Gemara is going to right away clarify. If you remember we learned the case. If a man, the Shemeres Yavam died, can you marry her mother? And that was how we got introduced to the whole yesh zika, ein zika. Rav was the one that says you can marry the mother. Rav holds ein zika. So the Gemara is going to have to clarify that Rav said this din not according to his own opinion, but this din is based on yesh zika, which means every sister is connected to all of the brothers. We're speaking about 3 sisters. Each one is connected to 2 brothers. And number 2, chalitza psula. It's a deficient chalitza. This is the new din that we're learning. A chalitza psula, a deficient chalitza, is a rabbinic law, and it means the following. Chalitza is really in the place of yibum. Yibum means that normal. Reuven died, Rachel. Shimon can marry Rachel, or he can do chalitza. So Rav is saying that whenever a man was unable to do yibum, in our case, because of the law of achay zikul kasei, whenever yibum was really not on the table, then the chalitza is not a full chalitza. It's enough to disconnect that widow from him, but it's not enough for the chalitza to disconnect this woman from the other brothers. And that makes some sense. When yibum is done, whenever there's more than 1 brother, let's say Reuven has all of the 12 shvatim. When Reuven passes away, you have 11 brothers left. If Shimon did yibum, Shimon's doing yibum doesn't only resolve Shimon, it resolves it for all the other brothers. Before Shimon did yibum, let's say yesh zika, who was she connected to? All of the brothers. When one of the brothers did Yibum, it took off the Zika from all of the brothers. In such a case, if Shimon is going to say, you know what, I'm doing Chalitza, so Chalitza is in the place of Yibum, Chalitza is Chalitza for all the brothers. But whenever one of the brothers, in this case will be all of the brothers, cannot do Yibum because of Chayziku Kasai, so therefore this type of Chalitza is not a full-fledged Chalitza, does not take away her bond from all of the brothers. Now, if you hold Ein Zika, also not problematic. Even though it's a Chalitza Psula, even though Yibum was not on the table, nevertheless Chalitza was done. Chalitza was done, it was done. But based on the idea of Yesh Zika, which means that this one widow is connected to everyone, whenever one brother, or more than one brother, cannot do Yibum, says Rav, then that Chalitza cannot resolve the Zika from the other brothers as well. It only resolves the Zika to him. So coming back over here, the case of Leah, so Leah is going to get a Chalitza from Yehuda, so it resolved Yehuda, she's still bound to Yisachar. She needs to get a Chalitza from Yisachar as well, and therefore when we learn the Mishnah, everything we learned in the Mishnah has to be put under that light. That if you hold the Yesh Zika, if you hold the din of Rav, whenever we learned in the Mishnah that there are two sisters, and you can't do Yibum because Achayziku Kasai, so the Mishnah says, Chol Tzois, V'lo Misyabnois, it must mean that what?
One and one.
Both, Chalitza from both. It's a new din.
Both did it with both.
Yes, both did it from both.
So but why in this case where there's three sisters, right? Are we saying that the first two...
That's the Gemara's next question. Let's read it inside. Ask the Gemara, 1 second. If that's your explanation, then who should need Chalitza from everyone? All of them. Whenever, listen, it makes sense what Rav is saying. If Yesh Zika, whenever Yibum could not have been done, so then the Chalitza doesn't resolve it for all of them. So what? So all of the three sisters should need Chalitza from both remaining brothers. Yoch asked the Gemara, Kamaisa Nami. The first two sisters, why are you telling me that, Rachel, Chalitza from Yehuda was good? Why is it good? Answers the Gemara, you're right. If it was like the case of our Mishnah, or in the case that Rav is saying, yes, each sister, there are three sisters, each one should need to get Chalitza from both remaining brothers. The case of Rav, where he only mentioned, the case of Rabbah, where he only mentioned that the Emtsois needs Chalitza from both, was the following, was the Nafel Bezu Acharzu, meaning Nafla Chada. Same case, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar. Reuven marries Rachel, Shimon married Leah, and Levi married Bilhah. Reuven died. Who do you have now? Only one sister. Now, don't forget the two brothers that are still married to their wives, they don't marry them. Who do you have now? Yehuda and Yisachar. Who is up for Yibum or Chalitza? One woman. Who can do it? Either brothers. And Taka, there's a mitzvah to do it. And they could have done Yibum then. They didn't. They did. No, they did Chalitza. Why did Rabbah say that each sister only got one Chalitza? It was because the Chalitza was done now. So Chalitza was done to her. And then, so here the word is, so she died.
So long as there's only one
sister,
then she only needs Chalitza.
Of course. I'll tell you better. If there's only one sister, she can also get Yibum. There's no Achoy Zikul Kasi. There's no two sisters up. So the one sister was up. That was the case of Rabbah. So she got Chalitza. So the Gemara gives the name, Reuven gave her Chalitza. We're using that Yehuda. And then Nafla Idach. And then Shimon dies. So Shimon's wife, Leah, is the only sister that's up for either Yibum or Chalitza. And again, let's give the case that now Yisachar gave her Chalitza. And now, Nafli Idach. Now, the third one died. Now, when the third one died, Levi's wife, what do we have over here? You have an issue of why can't he do Yibum with her? Because we... Achois Chalutzasai. That goes to the previous case as well. So, Yibum is not on the table. And the moment Yibum is not on the table, who do you need to get Chalitza from? That's the Chiddush of Rav, from both. Now you have now you have more than one. Now you have two. You understand? Two sisters. I mean, now she's the third sister. She's the only one up now for chalitza or yibum. Since yibum is asur, because achayitz chalutzasai, it's called the chalitza psula if yesh zika, who she connected to all of the brothers. The fact that the brothers are married or not is irrelevant. No one married the other sisters. There's no achayisishta here. Chalatz lahai mafkazikasei, chalatz lahai mafkazikasei. Each one needs to do chalitza. So now the Gemara just says what we spoke about before of Amarav. Doesn't Rav personally hold ein zika? Rav holds shemeres yavam shemesa muter be'ima. So the Gemara says, yeah, you're right. L'divrei ha'omer yesh zika ka'amar. Rav was explaining Rabba Barafuna Omar Rav's din. Why did Rav say she needs to get chalitza from both brothers? So he explained it because Rav must, according to the people that hold that yesh zika, because of the din of chalitza psula, you need chalitza from every sister. I just want to share the following: that the first Belzer Rebbe, the Sar Sholem, had 4 sons. I'm saying these dinim are practical. And the names, the oldest one was Rabbi Lazar. Then he had a son called Shmuel Shmelka. Then he had a son called Rabbi Yeshua. And his 4th son was called Rav Moshe. His second son, Rabbi Shmuel Shmelka, married and passed away without having children. Today we don't do yibum, we do chalitza. But we do chalitza. What did we learn together a few days ago? That ideally, upon whom is the mitzvah of chalitza? On the oldest brother. So who was going to do chalitza? Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar was married. According to Chenon and Rabbeinu Gershon, no, he can do yibum. He can do yibum. But chalitza he can do. So the Divrei Chaim wrote a tshuva to the Belzer Rebbe. And he tells him that who should be doing chalitza, not Rabbi Lazar. Because if he would do chalitza, what is that chalitza called? Chalitza psula. Why is it called chalitza psula? Because he cannot marry her. Who was she bound with? There were 3 brothers. Then she might need chalitza from another brother. So he said that the other brother who wasn't yet married should do chalitza. No, it's only a brother that could do yibum should be doing chalitza. It's Gavalik. That's how these halachas are in the Gelamais.
The oldest brother did chalitza?
Like this, being that the older brother who was married because of the chedim that Rabbeinu Gershon cannot do yibum, and we're learning over here there's a concept that when does a chalitza of one brother resolve her zika to all the brothers if he could have done yibum, and since because of the chedim he can't do yibum, it's called a chalitza psula. So the ideal of the older brother doesn't apply here, and the younger brother who wasn't married was the one that actually did chalitza. Let's stop here. God willing, to be continued tomorrow.